Imagine surviving a crash on a planet that's not even on the maps, your crew dead, your ship in ruins, and then realizing you're not alone. You're being hunted, not by a beast, but by an elite alien tracker trained to kill for sport. But this time, you're not just running, you're fighting back. This isn't just survival, it's the start of a rebellion. Buckle up, because the hunter just met their match. If you are new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Now let's move toward this wonderful story. The first thing Jonas Cade noticed was the smell, burnt metal and something sharp, almost electric. His eyes blinked open to darkness broken only by the pulsing red of the emergency light, blinking like a warning heartbeat. He groaned and rolled onto his side, pain flashing through his shoulder. The ground beneath him was jagged, a broken piece of his ship's hull pressing into his ribs. The silence was louder than any alarm. The Meridian had been flying smooth until the sensors went haywire and everything tipped into chaos. Now it was wreckage, twisted, cracked, and scattered across the surface of a world that wasn't on any of the standard star charts. He pushed himself up slowly, hissing as his bruised muscles protested. Around him, the remains of the survey team's cargo module smoked under the alien sky. The sky was dark green, streaked with clouds that didn't look like clouds at all, more like thick gas, heavy and unmoving. A few meters ahead, a body lay still, pinned under part of the collapsed wing. Jonas knew it was Tessa before he even reached her. Her uniform was scorched, her long braid full of ash. Her eyes were open, but didn't see anything anymore. He knelt, closing them gently. Tessa had been the team's security chief. Tough, sarcastic, impossible to shake. Now gone, just like the rest of the crew probably. A bitter lump formed in Jonas's throat as he stood again. They hadn't stood a chance. Something didn't feel right. Crashes made noise, fires crackled, wreckage groaned, but it was too quiet now, like the planet itself was holding its breath. That's when he heard it, a soft sound, barely more than a whisper. Not wind, not debris shifting. Fabric, maybe. A slow movement. Controlled. Deliberate. Someone, or something, was out there. Jonas froze, his hand slowly moving to the emergency kit strapped to his belt. Inside was a plasma cutter, mostly used for repairs but capable of slicing through metal. It wasn't much, but right now it was the only thing standing between him and whatever was watching. He ducked behind a slanted slab of hull, heart thudding in his chest. The sound came again, this time closer. Jonas squinted through the flickering red light and saw her, tall, graceful, almost too graceful. She moved like she was floating, her steps precise, her body flowing like liquid. Her suit was sleek, tight, and changed color as she moved, blending into the rocky background. An alien, clearly, and not just by her armor. Her face was sharp, with high cheekbones and pale gray skin that glowed faintly under the strange sky. Her eyes were like molten gold, beautiful but cold. Very cold. She paused near the broken wing, her head tilting slightly, listening. Jonas held his breath, staying perfectly still. The cutter in his hand felt small now, almost laughable. She was a hunter, no doubt about it. Not a rescue worker. Not a scavenger. She wasn't here to help. And she was definitely looking for him. When she spoke, her voice was calm, smooth, and carried through the quiet air like smoke. "Human," she called softly with a strange accent but perfect pronunciation. "You survived." "That is interesting." Jonas didn't move. Maybe she'd pass by. Maybe she'd think he was dead. "I am Lyra of the Seventh Path," she said. "I have tracked creatures across 10 worlds. Today, I track you." That confirmed it. She wasn't here by chance. She had come for him, or maybe for the crew. But why? And why the crash? He remembered how sudden it had been. The ship's systems had failed in a pattern, not randomly. It was like someone had shut them down from the outside. As Lyra moved through the wreckage, Jonas began to crawl backward, careful not to disturb any loose debris. Each movement had to be perfect, silent, The light from her suit's visor swept past him but didn't catch. His training from years ago kicked in. Never panic, always plan. Use the terrain. And this planet had terrain in spades. Jagged rock, formations, narrow canyons, and crumbling ridges stretched out beyond the crash zone. He could use that. He had to. Lyra paused near a scorch mark on the ground, crouching low to examine it. Even her crouch was elegant, fluid. Jonas could tell she wasn't just dangerous. She was precise. Her body language gave nothing away except confidence, the kind that came from never failing a mission. But there was something else in her posture too. Curiosity. She wasn't just hunting. She wanted to see what he would do. That gave him a sliver of hope. He reached the edge of the wreckage and looked back. She was moving away now, following a trail he had deliberately created with scattered footprints and heat signatures. He'd used broken glass to reflect light and a dropped emergency blanket to give off a faint energy reading. She bought it. At least for now. Beyond the crash site, the terrain turned into a sprawling canyon maze. It would be hard for even a tracker like Lyra to stay invisible in tight spaces. And if Jonas kept moving, stayed smart, stayed calm, he had a chance. Not a good one, but a chance. He took a deep breath and stepped onto the uneven ground beyond, the wreckage. The sky above rumbled quietly, distant thunder from a storm that hadn't arrived yet. Lyra's voice echoed faintly from behind him. "You run well, human. I hope you make this worth my time." Jonas didn't answer. He just kept moving, one step at a time, deeper into the unknown. Jonas moved carefully along the edge of a steep canyon wall, his boots slipping slightly on the loose rock. His breaths were short and measured, not from panic, but from discipline. It had been hours since the crash, and the sun on this planet didn't seem to move. The light was a strange yellow-green, casting long shadows across the red stone cliffs. Behind him, somewhere in the maze of rocky gullies and narrow paths, the huntress was still tracking him. He didn't need to look back. He could feel her presence like a cold breeze that never quite touched skin but never went away either. Lyra was faster, stronger. She had tools he didn't understand and senses far beyond human. But Jonas had one thing she didn't. He knew how to think like prey, and more importantly, how to stop thinking like prey. On Earth, his grandfather had taught him how to track deer through forest trails, how to confuse a predator by looping paths and leaving false trails. It had all seemed so simple back then. Now those same lessons might be the only thing keeping him alive. Every move he made was with intention. He walked through cold streams to mask his scent. He doubled back through narrow rock passages to confuse her heat sensors. He climbed higher when the terrain grew narrow, hiding his trail where wind blew away footprints. If she wanted to catch him, she'd have to work for it. Behind him, every so often came a sound. Just one. A rock sliding. A whisper of movement. She wasn't rushing, that was clear. She was pacing herself, confident. She was enjoying this. For her, it wasn't about speed. It was about control. Jonas stopped near the edge of a narrow gorge. A thick metal pipe from the ship's debris lay across a 15-foot gap. Carefully, he lashed it to a jagged boulder using cable from his belt. It wouldn't hold forever, but it only needed to last a minute or two. He used it to swing himself across the gorge, landing roughly on the far ledge. Scraped his elbow, but didn't slow down. Before disappearing, he tossed another piece of fabric with his body's heat signature. Back near the cliff edge, a decoy for Lyra to find. Then he vanished into a narrow crack in the stone. Inside the tiny cavern, Jonas paused. His heart thudded in his chest like a warning drum, but he didn't let it rush him. He took small sips of water, then listened. Sure enough, Lyra was on, the other side of the gorge not long after. He watched her from a small crevice, her form shimmering slightly as her suit tried to match the canyon's dull red walls. She touched the swinging pipe with one hand, studied it, then looked up. She didn't see him. Not yet. "You're clever," she called out, her voice smooth and calm. "You learn fast. I respect that." Jonas didn't answer. He didn't trust what she might be trying to do. Flattery was just another weapon for a hunter. You hide like a creature that's been hunted before, she added. But you're not just hiding, are you? You're thinking. He closed his eyes briefly. She was trying to get in his head, but she wasn't wrong. He was thinking. Every step, every breath, every decision, it all mattered. She had never hunted someone like him before. She expected fear. She expected desperation. Instead, Jonas gave her patience and planning. He moved again after she turned her attention toward the false trail. Each step deeper into the canyon was harder, but it bought him time. The rock walls narrowed, the path becoming more like a tunnel than a trail. He found a natural spring trickling down a mossy rock face, and used the moisture to clean his hands and face. His suit was already scratched and dusty, but now it looked more natural, less like a human, more like the environment. Further ahead, the terrain changed again. The air grew warmer, thick with the scent of minerals. Steam hissed from cracks in the earth. Jonas crouched and studied the map in his wrist module, an old, limited model, but enough to know he was entering geothermal territory. Dangerous, but perfect. He spent the next hour using the surroundings to his advantage. He laid a trail of small metal fragments that would attract her motion sensors. He dropped a flare into a thermal vent to create a misleading heat signature. He scratched decoy footprints into ash-covered stone and even smeared a little of his blood, just a scratch from a sharp rock on a false trail. It wasn't about getting away anymore. It was about wearing her down, making her second guess, making her wonder if she was still in control. Eventually, he found a wide cavern hidden behind a curtain of steam. Inside, he set up a small rest station using salvaged supplies. He checked his water. Still enough for a day. The plasma cutter was charged. He ate a protein bar slowly, listening for any signs of movement. Then he heard her voice again, faint and echoing through the canyon. "You're not prey," she said. "You're something else." Jonas let out a quiet breath. She was starting to understand. The game had changed, and now she wasn't the only one hunting. Jonas crept through the narrow crack in the canyon wall, the stone cool against his back as he slid sideways to fit through. The passage opened into a shadowy space carved into the rock, part of it crumbling with age, the other half reinforced with smooth, unnatural panels. It looked like someone had built a facility here long ago, and then tried to erase it. Dust floated in the air, glittering in the dim light from a cracked panel overhead. Jonas lowered his hand from the wall and stepped cautiously inside. Something about this place didn't feel abandoned. It felt buried. He moved silently, his eyes scanning every surface. His boots stepped over broken crates and long-dead power cells. On one of the walls, alien symbols were carved deep into the metal. His suit's translator flickered to life, struggling to understand the old language. As it worked, Jonas noticed several storage units stacked in the corner. Most were empty, but one had a faint green light still blinking. He opened it slowly and found a datapad inside, dusty but intact. He activated it, and lines of code and files came to life. The words that followed made his stomach twist. There were records, dozens of them, describing the crash of the Meridian not as an accident, but as part of a scheduled hunt. The crew had been lured here, their arrival planned down to the minute. They were listed in a roster of targets, each one given a value. Jonas scrolled faster, heart pounding. There were others, other ships, other crews. Humans, yes, but also aliens. Sentient beings marked for death and sport, used to entertain wealthy clients who watched from afar. The facility wasn't just a shelter. It had been part of a massive operation, a hunting ground built into the bones of this planet. His hands shook as he backed away from the console. Tessa hadn't died in an accident. She'd been murdered, hunted like some rare animal, and he'd been next on the list. Anger rose in him like heat from the canyon floor, but he forced it down. He needed to think. He needed to get this data out and expose whoever had done this. The sound of footsteps echoed faintly from outside. Jonas ducked behind a metal panel, crouching low. A moment later, Lyra stepped into the room, her suit flickering as it adapted to the indoor light. She wasn't rushing. She knew he was here. Her golden eyes scanned the room, then landed on the glowing datapad still resting on the console. She looked at it for a long moment before speaking. "You found it," she said softly, not with anger, but something that sounded almost like regret. "You weren't supposed to." Jonas stepped out from behind the panel, weapon in hand, but not raised. "You knew about this?" Her eyes met his. "Not all of it," she said, voice tight. "I was told your ship was dangerous. Pirates, raiders, maybe smugglers. That's how they justified it to me. A hunt sanctioned by law. But this..." She looked at the screen again. "This is something else. They paid you to kill us," Jonas said. "To chase us down for sport." She didn't argue. Instead, she walked slowly to the edge of the room and sat down, resting her arms on her knees. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, like the weight of truth pressing down on both of them. Finally, Lyra looked up. "I've hunted for years," she said. "Beasts, criminals, creatures that destroyed entire outposts. But this was supposed to be different, clean, controlled." Her voice lowered. "I should have seen it." Jonas stepped forward, calmer now. "Why didn't you kill me when you had the chance?" She shrugged slightly. "You didn't act like prey, you kept moving, you kept thinking. It stopped feeling like a hunt, started feeling like a challenge." He nodded. "Well, challenge or not, this whole place is part of something sick, and I'm not leaving without making sure it ends." Lyra stood. "Then you'll need help." Jonas raised an eyebrow. "You want to switch sides that fast?" She walked to the console and picked up the datapad, scanning the files quickly. "You're not wrong. If even half of this is real, then my employers have lied to me for years. I won't be part of that anymore." Jonas studied her for a moment. Her posture had changed, still strong, still focused, but something was different in her eyes. Less ice, more fire. "All right," he said. "Then we take it down, together." They spent the next few hours salvaging supplies from the facility, old power cores, communications tools, even a half-working drone. Jonas worked with the precision of a man on a mission. Lyra moved beside him, silent but sharp, watching his every motion. By the time they left the hidden bunker, the sun was starting to dip behind a jagged ridge. The air felt thicker now, like the planet itself knew what was coming. Jonas looked at Lyra. "You think they'll come after us?" She smiled, not kindly. "They'll send more. But this time they won't be chasing prey. They'll be walking into a fight." As they moved together through the canyon shadows, neither of them said much, but something had shifted. Not just in their plan, but in their connection. What had started as a hunt had become something else entirely. And whatever waited ahead, they would face it not as enemies, but as something far more dangerous. Allies. A pale sun rose behind the cliffs, casting long shadows across the blackened ground. Jonas stood beside Lyra on a high ridge overlooking the hidden complex buried within the canyon below. The place looked quiet from a distance, like it had been abandoned for years. But inside, they both knew it was very much alive. It was the heart of the operation, a control center disguised as ruins, where the hunts were planned and the deaths were counted like points on a scoreboard. Somewhere in those walls, the one responsible was watching, still believing he held the upper, and Jonas checked his gear one last time. His suit was patched with spare materials, his plasma cutter modified into something closer to a weapon than a tool. Beside him, Lyra adjusted her cloak, her face hard with purpose. There was no trace of the cool, calculating hunter he'd first seen. She wasn't here for the thrill of the chase now. She was here for justice. They moved down the slope with quiet speed, staying low and using the terrain to their advantage. Smoke drifted in lazy spirals from vents hidden in the rock, and soft hums echoed from the complex's buried generators. As they approached the entrance, Jonas activated a small charge. The doorway didn't explode. It simply opened with a mechanical sigh, the locks overridden with the codes they'd stolen earlier. The silence inside was cold and waiting. They slipped through the corridors like ghosts, guided by memory and instinct. Jonas led with a scanner that highlighted movement, while Lyra kept her weapon ready. As they passed through the halls, they saw proof of what had been happening here. Walls lined with monitors showed images from different hunt zones: desert, planets, frozen wastelands, alien forests, all of them with moving dots marked as targets. Some were humans, others were not. All were prey. "We end this today," Jonas said under his breath. Their destination was the command room, where the hunts were monitored, where the clients watched, and where the man behind it all waited. His name was Darnex Vell, an executive from a private organization that posed as a research group. In reality, he was the architect of the so-called sport, finding the most dangerous beings and turning their final moments into entertainment for the rich. They reached the outer door of the command room just as alarms began to blare. Darnex had found them. The light shifted to a deep red and a mechanical voice echoed through the hallway. "Unauthorized presence detected. Defense protocol activated." "Looks like we've overstayed our welcome," Jonas said. "Then let's give them something to remember," Lyra replied. The doors burst open and the fight began. Armed guards poured in from side passages, their armor heavy and their weapons precise. Jonas and Lyra fought back to back, using the narrow halls to their advantage. Jonas had set traps earlier, wired explosives, motion sensors, noise decoys. One by one they triggered, sending confusion and fire through the ranks of their attackers. Lyra moved with terrifying grace. Every step, every shot was efficient. She wasn't hunting now, she was defending something that mattered. Jonas, bruised but focused, used the environment like a second weapon, knocking down metal beams to block paths, luring guards into ambush zones and disabling power cores to shut down security systems. Finally, they reached the central chamber. Darnex stood on a raised platform surrounded by screens and a few remaining guards. He didn't look surprised, he looked annoyed. "You're ruining years of work," he said, folding his arms. "You've been killing people for sport," Jonas answered, stepping forward. "They weren't criminals. They weren't threats. They were just people." "Challenges," Darnex corrected. "Nothing more." Lyra stepped beside Jonas, her eyes locked on Darnex. "You sent me to kill him," she said. "You told me lies, told me I was hunting criminals, but you were the real threat." Darnex waved a hand. "You were paid to hunt. Don't pretend this is about morality now." "It is," she said, "because I'm not a hunter anymore." Darnex reached for a concealed weapon, but he never had the chance to fire. Jonas's plasma cutter lit up with a sharp hiss, and in one quick movement, the gun was knocked from the executive's hand. Lyra's next shot disabled the final security node. All around them, the facility went dark. They tied Darnex's hands and recorded a full confession from the facility's files. Then they uploaded everything: video footage, financial records, the target lists, to every known communications channel in orbit. The truth would spread like wildfire, reaching planets and systems far beyond. As they walked out of the complex, the ridge bathed in the morning light, Jonas glanced at Lyra. She looked different. Still powerful, still focused, but softer somehow, as if the weight she carried had lifted, if only slightly. "What now?" he asked. She looked up at the sky, then back at him. "We find the others, the ones who funded this, the ones who hid, and we stop them too." Jonas nodded. "Together?" Lyra smiled. "Always." The wind blew across the canyon, carrying away the ashes of what had been. The hunt was over, the game was broken, and in its place something new had begun. Not a war, not a chase, but a mission, a purpose. And two people who had once been enemies were now something far stronger. Partners.